Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe the Show. We are so excited that you found us for another episode. I am really excited about today's guest, but here we are again telling the story about people here in Clarksville who make this place the greatest place to live. Fascinating stories from people all across our community. We get to tell the stories of people who were born and raised here, like my guest today, as well as newcomers who have found Clarksville home either through the military, a job relocation, or just decided to pick this great place as a spot on the map, and they moved here and they fully invested in it. We're telling a story about leaders and influencers from all over Clarksville who just make this a positive, engaging place to raise our family, somewhere we can be really proud of. My guest today is right in line with that. She is someone that I have been very excited about having as a guest on this show for a very long time. We are kind of in the same generation of being born and raised here in Clarksville. We had a lot of mutual friends growing up, and our lives haven't really intersected until we became adults and moved back home. But she is just an influencer. I kind of quietly call her Queen Midas. Everything she does just turns into gold. She is fantastic in what she does. She was formerly a part of the public school system here for a while. She has started some nonprofit work and is now the head of school at Chapel Hill Christian Academy. And she has started that from scratch. And I'm sure you have heard of it. And if you have not, we're going to get to hear so much more of her story. Her name is Sara Hendrix. Sara, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't tell you I was giving you that Midas line.
No, you've really amped me up now.
Well,
okay.
It is nothing but the truth. Whenever somebody brings your name up, I'm like, well, if she's involved, it's going to be fantastic. From If Table, you got Mayor Pitts elected, right?
Well,
so
that was a really fun campaign to be a part of. It was awesome.
So if you've ever wondered how Joe Pitts actually became mayor, it's because he had a magician like Sara Hendrix running the campaign behind the scenes. And then here we are now a couple of years later after those things, and Chapel Hill has blossomed into this fantastic school that I get to be a part of as a parent, and my kids get to be enjoying there, but we get to see it grow into something that I know you have just got to be profoundly proud of, and yet at the same time, very hopeful for the future that we're unfolding, and you're unfolding, and your team is unfolding as each new day and semester and academic year rolls by.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you for all that you've done. I'm really excited to bring to our listeners the story of how school was kind of formed in your heart, how that came to be. It was at a very chaotic time, right around that COVID year. And then here we are now in its third, moving into fourth year at some point, and it continues to grow with lots of great things on the future for us. So as kind of a lead-off question, can you tell us a little bit about where Chapel Hill is as of now? And then we'll reverse track and go kind of back into when did you first have the dream about it and its early stages?
Sure. So Chapel Hill Christian Academy is an independent private school here in Clarksville, and we are pre-K through 7th grade right now. And so that's been growth over the past couple of years. We also have a hybrid homeschool program, which I felt like was a community here in Clarksville that didn't have a lot of needs met with having students come to a school and have that social aspect, but also the academic aspect. And so it's a really beautiful blend of Christian education and also opportunities for hybrid homeschool students. So it's been incredible. Right now we have 272 students.
Wow.
We have 56 faculty and staff, which is crazy to me because I'm like, woo! The Lord took me from like 0 to 60. And so,
that is it.
But
quickly tell us who was number one.
Who was the first student?
Who was the first staff person?
Oh, first hire. Lori Tucker.
Oh,
and
Miss Tucker.
Yeah, I know. And I don't even know
She's a legend.
Exactly. And so I called her. I was like, it was at Christmas in 2019. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to start a school. She was retired, like loving life. And she was like, oh, that's great. And I was like, I want you to teach at it. And so,
here's part B of that statement.
Yeah. And I don't even know if I could call her a hire because at the beginning we were like, I might be able to pay you. I might not. Like, I don't know what this is going to look like. And she was in. She was like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well, what a blessing. I remember when we had that very first year, kind of this introduction into the school, the two of you were sitting there and, of course she teaches kindergarten. My daughter was entering kindergarten that year. I didn't know that Miss Tucker would be her teacher, and we hadn't really met each other yet, but you could tell the experience, the kind of dignity, the aura that she carries about herself. She knew how to get the school going. And I'm sure you've relied on a lot of people like Miss Tucker to get it to where it is now. But I didn't know she was number one. That's a really cool story.
And then Trina Snyder, she was right there alongside of her. And then Becky Krukerberg. Yeah. So she was there with the hybrid homeschool aspect, which I'm like, I just think those moms and dads are incredible. I'm like, how do you do that? It's just amazing. And so the four of us, we were like, let's start a school. Wow. And so we took it day by day, and, you know, the Lord blessed us and allowed us to open the doors in 2020.
Yeah. Which, you know, I try not to interject myself into stories too much because this is really about Chapel Hill, but around the same time, I was starting this dental practice from scratch. Right. And so I looked at you as kind of like, hey, I kind of know what you're going through. Like, you know, I know the challenges, but what I think we both did very, very wisely, and is what has allowed my practice to be successful and has allowed Chapel Hill to grow, is we leveraged the experience and the wisdom and the knowledge of people who we got the privilege of growing up with. And we had decades long relationships with that we could look and say, you know, for me, it was Mike Boysaw, our general contractor that just helped me get it up and going, and then some other dentists. But people like you mentioned, Miss Snyder, Becky Kirkenberg, you know, Miss Tucker, having those relationships in place, casting your vision to them, and then having confidence in not only the vision, but who you were as a person, that you had the ability to bring this. You had the golden touch, and you displayed that in everything you've ever done that all of us have seen you do your entire life. We knew that it was going to be successful, and I'm sure they did from the very beginning. So tell us a little bit about maybe when did that first idea come about? Because you do have a history in education. You had been a part of the school system here, so it's kind of in your DNA. But when did this idea of taking a big leap of faith and creating a school from scratch start?
Yeah, because that's crazy, right?
It really kind of is.
It really is.
Unless you've started something from scratch that's kind of like in your industry, you don't realize how many systems questions you're going to have to develop and answer. You don't even know all the questions to ask from the very beginning. It is just probably a God-planted seed that grows in your heart that doesn't go away. And when you recognize this is not going away, it's not going away. Like, he's given me this to bring as a gift to our community. So I'm naturally a little bit personally curious about your journey in that, and how many times did you say no before you said yes?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. So my journey with education started, you know, as a little girl, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher growing up, and playing with my dolls and my stuffed animals and my sisters, you know. And so that was just in me. I know all my teachers, and, like, you know, I just love them.
I imagine your sister says, she was trying to be teacher all the time.
Bossy. Yeah. And I was like, sit down. No. And so that was just something that I had a passion for my entire life. And then I had the opportunity to go to MTSU and Austin P for my education there. But when I came back, you know, back to Clarksville, I was able to teach and start off in Clarksville, Montgomery County. And so that was in 2009 when I first started teaching. And I got married that same year, had a baby that same year, bought a house that same year. So I'm like, we're just going to do it all.
That's right.
And so
that's the early 20s.
I cried a lot.
That's right.
No, but that was really when I knew this is the gift that God's given me to share. Like, I love being with the kids. And so I just continued to teach and had incredible training, great leaders that I was able to work under as a classroom teacher. And then later on in my career with Clarksville, Montgomery County, I looked into becoming a technology coach. And then I went into new teacher induction for the district. And so it was when I was at central office when God really began to open my eyes of the need for a Christian school. And so that was something that necessarily wasn't there before. I'd always had a relationship with the Lord. It really shifted in 2016 when my sister Shay passed away. That August, you know, that day that we found out about her death, that really changed my entire life. And before then, I tried to check the boxes, and I went to church, and I felt like I was doing all the not good religion things, but there was no relationship with the Lord there just yet. And so in grief and in the healing through that of her loss, that's when it really began to shift. And so my priorities changed in my life, and what I wanted to see from the fruit of my family and the way I spent my time. I get emotional thinking about it because it just impacted me so much. And so I really wrestled with that, though, for about 6 months of just the grief and, you know, healing from that. But it's crazy how God works, because at that time I was pregnant with our youngest, Elsie, and I got put on bed rest for 8 weeks. And so I guess we're the same. We just go.
Right.
And so,
Never slow down.
And
then here we are. Now we got to slow down for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. In a quiet house all by yourself.
Oh,
and
wow.
so that's when I began journaling. And I talk about that because that's really when my relationship took a next step. And I spent intentional time with the Lord seeking his heart and his will for me. And so it was in that time that this began to start to bud. So a few years later, we've got July of 2019, and I am journaling. And in that quiet time, I'm like, man, how cool would it be to have a Christian school? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, God, somebody should totally do that. Like, I will go work there. I will be there. That'll be awesome.
I could be a technology coach.
I could totally do that, And so then I wrestled with that for like 3 or 4 months because honestly, I didn't feel equipped. And I was like, who am I to start a school? I've never been an administrator. Yeah. I've never started a school. I don't know a lot about private schools. And so I really was like, no. So it took about 3 or 4 months before my journaling and my prayers started to change to like, no, Lord, but more to like, just equip me, Lord. And like what you were talking about with like surrounding yourself with people, that's what I've started praying for from like day one of, okay, Lord, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to need help. Yeah. I'm super aware of the gaps that I have. And Lord, I need you to bring people with that expertise around me and that wisdom to help me because this is a big task, And so when you're talking about forming a child's faith and their academics, like that's the most intimate part of a family, their faith. And so it was definitely a few months of a journey for me to say yes. Yeah. I didn't have all the answers at that time. There's definitely not, you can't Google the handbook on how to do this.
There is no handbook.
And so that was a scary leap of faith for my husband, Chad, and I to say, I've got this dream. I think I'm going to start a private school. So I needed more information. So that fall of 2019, I just gathered as much information as I could. So I started visiting classical schools, Montessori schools, traditional schools, Christian schools, and I would just email the head of schools or principals, and I would say, hey, my name is Sara. I think I'm going to start a school. Can I come and visit? And they were so kind, and they let me come. Yeah. And I feel like that's where God was showing me, like, I love this, or do something different here. And so I just journaled everything. I took notes on everything, and I just wrote it down, and I feel like that's where the name of the school, the mission, just different priorities the school would set on our schedule and like meeting with the Lord each morning, like all of that came from those quiet moments with him. Yeah. And so January of 2020, I resigned from my position. I left a salary and benefits and retirement to chase a dream. And I started building the website. And so I go back and I'm like, God, you were preparing me along the way with like the technology training that I was given. And then here I am, like building a website for the school, and I wanted to cast the vision for the community. Yeah. So we made a video with me and my family at our house, and
I remember that video.
I just shared like what God was showing me. Yeah. And the feedback was so overwhelming.
I do want to take a moment on that because I think, when before I announced that I was starting a dental practice, and my situation was different, but there was a natural fear of like, okay, I might have the skills to do this and I might have the resources to do this. But as soon as I put this out there, I can't retreat from it.
It's kind of like really hard.
And here's what I remember. As soon as we put it out, there were a handful of people whose feedback was so critical because I just latched onto it of like, if they believe I can do this, then maybe I really can do this. Do you remember anybody in that time where there's just like, we put this video out, like I'm not sure how it's going to be received, but these first few people spoke words of encouragement or affirmation in that time that really gave me an assurance that not only was this a calling that I was confident that I could move towards, but I have more of a true calling into this, that the Lord's working something special.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So during those months of me just wrestling and praying through it, and so one of the first people I told was, of course, my husband, but my sister, Lindsay Heggie. And having her support, because it's scary when you first speak it out, because it's like fine up in here, but then when you like say it out, you're like, oh my gosh, it's really happening. Right. And so she was just so kind to believe in me, and like the way that she cheered me on and supported me and was like, let's do it. I want to help you, And so, and then I also needed more help in how do you start a business with the state of Tennessee? What type of school is that?
That website's not too easy to figure out.
And so that's where Miss Cindy and Joe Pitts really stepped in, and he helped me and just helped me get in the right room with the right people. I can remember sitting at the table with him and her and at the Department of Education, and the lady came to sit down with me, and I plopped my prayer journal on the table and I was like, here's what I think I want to do.
Yeah.
I need your help. What category is it? Like, what does
Yes.
this look like? I want
Right.
Bibles open in school.
Yeah.
And she was so kind to walk me through that and just
Yeah.
step by step,
That is a
here's the
blessing.
application. And then as we go on, Priscilla's story was a
Yeah.
huge supporter throughout, and ended up being, she's now our board
Sure.
chairman. And then I even think about the supporters from the school system. And so I had, Emily Vaughn was one of the first people I had to tell when I needed to
Sure.
resign. And I was
Yeah.
like scared to death. I was like sweating before I had to go tell her. And I left that room. She prayed over me and cried with me and was just like, Sarah, that God's called you to do this.
Wow.
And so that meant so much to me, because I respect her opinion and her expertise
Yes,
so
tremendously.
much.
Right.
And for her to believe in me, I was like, maybe I can do this.
Yes.
You know, like,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And what's funny to me is I think you had those natural doubts about yourself. I don't think anyone shared those. And so my point in saying that is naturally we doubt ourselves more than anyone else does.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as you said that, everyone knew that this school was going to be fantastic. You know, I don't want to say that about myself, but what I hear about leaders who are visionary types who bring things into the world that maybe didn't exist before is we all deal with really deeply rooted insecurities. Like, are we going to be good enough? Are we going to actually make this work? And what I would say to hopefully someone that might be listening or watching this is Sarah and I are both proof that we've had those feelings and we've received encouragement from others. So whatever it is, when someone is pitching you this idea of bringing this into, you can be that person that is the creator or the encourager. And it's both very critical parts of that journey.
Yeah.
But it's very cool to hear that side of the story. So you've been telling the story of where you got, and then the elephant in the room is COVID hits.
Yeah.
Right. And that shakes up the entire education world. And I'm sure it was a big deflation of a hope bubble to you at some point. And then you're rolling around and this school is starting in August and there's no playbook for COVID in early elementary education. And you're leading this by faith, and you've got a few families that have jumped in and they're sending their kids to you, and you're figuring out health deals and family dynamics and all of the other things that go about being a school. Talk to us a little bit about that first year, and specifically like how have some of those experiences really equipped you as a leader into taking the next phase of Chapel Hill's growth?
Sure. So in those months when COVID first hit, I can remember just thinking, God, like, I know you called me to do this, but like, I'm trying to start your school here and schools are shutting down.
Could you
and
pick a
people
different
are
decade?
Yeah. And I was just like, what have I done? I've quit my job. And so that was really hard as a mother and my own family and what that meant for us. But I'll tell you, one of the most impactful things was I was listening to a podcast by Jenny Allen. And one of the questions she asked was, if fear was not a part of this or failure, what would you do? And I listened to that and I was like, man, if I wasn't afraid of failing, I would do it. I would do it.
Right.
And so it was like, from that moment, I was like, and it goes back to those months of me building that relationship with the Lord, for me to trust him so wholeheartedly that I'm just going to go forward. It's going to be fine. Yeah. And so when we opened the doors in 2020 of August, like you said, didn't know what to expect. I definitely had people contact me and tell me how crazy I was to do that. And concerned about like the medical aspect of it, of like you're bringing children together. But there was such a peace, and the staff and the families that had joined us that year, they're like, we're excited and we want this. And we took all the right precautions and we made sure that they were safe. But we opened those doors with chapel on that first day, and we spoke scripture of Psalm 91 over the students in the school. And since that very first day, we still till today recite Psalm 91 each and every day. Yeah,
that I'm glad you brought that up. You know, my daughter's in second grade now. She probably learned it as a kindergartner, and I hear my pre-K 4 student now who's 5 years old. She can recite most of it. What about Psalm 91 did you feel like was so important or so meaningful to you that you've incorporated it into I don't know if it's daily, but it's a very regular rhythm of the students' spiritual development and maturity and journey into hiding the word of the Lord in their hearts.
Oh, yeah.
So specifically, is there a story about how that came to be?
Yeah. And if you look in the Bible, it's Psalm 91 is a prayer of protection. And so that was just my prayer from the moment I knew God was calling me to do this. I prayed for the teachers. I prayed for the students that would come, the families. I didn't know who they were, but I knew God was going to call them. Yeah. And then when we opened the doors, the prayer of protection was really to focus our faith on Him. And we're gonna move forward with wisdom, but we're also going to move forward with faith. Yeah. And fear would have been very easy to take over when you're taking on a task of this size. Yeah. And so in order for us to be successful and just to maintain our the Word of God and like believing in the active, breathing, living Scripture. And so let's put that into practice. Like, let's not just check the box that we're Christian, but guys, we're gonna live by this. And so that was just something that we did, and it just, the doubts and the fears and the anxieties that we all felt about starting a school, or how is this going to work out, or what is this going to look like? I don't know, but I believe that God's called us here.
Yeah, that is powerful.
Yeah. It was, I was going to tell you too, like, it's crazy to me also that we opened the doors in August with 120 students. So we were full. We opened pre-K 3 through 5th grade. And so the plan was to just start. And how did you know to do that? It was just families kept signing up. So I'm like, we have a 4th grade now. Yeah. We have a 5th grade now,
Here we go.
And so I just adapted. And that July right before is when I was like, okay, we need curriculum, we need to order. And so it was just beautiful though, how like everything came together. And so throughout that first year, our students were able to travel through classes and have art and music and Spanish and PE. And so we just put Chapel Hill together, and it's the team that God called together that first year, because it takes a really special family and teacher to say, I want to be a part of something from the ground up. Yeah, the pioneering spirit is kind of that leadership ethic. It takes a pioneering and visionary leader to speak it into existence, but also it takes people who are really stable and who want to latch on to the pioneer's vision in order to catch it and then run with it. Because everyone's going to have their own opinion. Yeah. But essentially, you've got to have a team that works together that is moving in the same direction, especially when you're creating something from scratch. But that first year, was a lot of fun. It was so critical at that time, for our family, and I'm sure many students who were there during that year shared the same experience. And now yet you've not really moved past the fear zone, right? Because this next step in Chapel Hill is still where your visionary spirit is, outpacing your resources consistently, which is what visionary leaders do. And we're looking at, the next phase of having a physical location of a school that kids know as the permanent location. And yet the fear that comes along with that, the ill-equipped, that I don't know fire codes and I don't know what it takes to, ecologically, geologically test this land and things like that. All of those have been recent issues that you've been dealing with. But you've launched this campaign to potentially acquire land and build buildings. And tell us about this next phase of Chapel Hill as you've seen the continued growth in terms of numbers of families and students. And you know that at some point, we're probably past it, but you've got to have more space. Yeah. So at the end of year 2, we outgrew our space, which is crazy. I'm like, how did that even happen? We were really blessed for Living Hope Baptist Church open their doors to us. First Baptist Church has opened their doors to us, and now Hilldale Baptist Church has opened their doors. And so for us to be welcomed, and for them also to say, we believe in the mission, we believe what you're doing in the community and the kingdom work happening, and so come use our space. But with that, we've outgrown it. And so right now we're at 2 campuses. We're looking forward to next year moving our lower school and our upper school both to Hilldale Baptist Church. But we know that's for a temporary time. So we've got a 5-year contract that we have with Hilldale. And in this past year, the Lord's really placed it on our heart of like, let's find a permanent place here in Clarksville. And so what does that look like for us? And so we've got a land committee that's been searching, and it's really hard to find a lot of land to build a complex, like to build a whole campus. For a school that just started. No big deal, right? And you go to those guys and like, here's our budget. And they're like, wait, what? Exactly, right? And because we don't have like millions of dollars. Right. And so it was one Sunday I was driving to church. But you'll take them if somebody has them. Yeah, that would be really helpful. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but we did want to make that clear. I need help. No, but I was driving to church, and it's right here, right down the road from us. And the sun was coming across the hill. And like one of the just desires of my heart would be like, God, how beautiful would it be for the chapel where the students meet every morning to be up on a hill and to have that, shine that light for the community. And so I was just dreaming about it. And I was like, I'm just gonna text the landowner, and I'd grown up in this community here in Sango. Right. And so I've been on this land as a little girl with my dad and the tractor and cutting the hay. And so it's just crazy to me to think that God saved this property, these 56 acres for Chapel Hill. And so one thing led to another. We met the landowner and we evaluated the land. We've gone through all the geological testing. I've learned a lot through adding sprinkler systems and fire codes and all sorts of things. But
the things you didn't know to journal about in 2019.
No, I did not journal about those things. That was not in my plan. But it just, step by step, it's just been so smooth. Yeah. And so families have come together. We've asked for founding families. And so what that is we need help making this happen because we are a brand new school. But we've got the families who believe in the vision. We've got the families who are here, who are enrolling their students. So next year we're looking at almost 400 children. And I'm like, how incredible is that to think, we're adding 8th grade next year. Our goal is to continue adding through 12th grade. So by May of 2028, that'll be our oldest class when they graduate. Like they're going to graduate from Chapel Hill, whether it's at Hilldale Baptist or on the land in a building or on a tent, like we're graduating these babies to go out and serve the Lord. And so for me, one of the things in the journaling was just a vision for a campus where there was a space for reverence for the Lord to meet with him in the chapel, and the classrooms felt like home, and the kids could go outside and play. It's also the agriculture side. Like I want to have, it sounds silly, but like chickens and animals and greenhouses for children to care for things and get their hands dirty, and an athletic complex for sports and the culture and community that brings too. And so the space that we found is beautiful. It has the hill and the plans that we've been working on with Joshua Wright, our architect, and he's just taken everything that's in my head and heart and put it onto paper, which I know is not the easiest. I'm sure is
a very good skill. Shout out to Josh.
Yeah, he spent a lot of hours doing that, but.
Well, it's funny because I've been working with an architect for my own project, and you can always tell when they're trying to be so polite. Yeah. I've been working with Brad Martin on my dental building, and they're like, okay, but you don't really know what that takes to actually make that happen. Yeah. Like that, it's like you see their gears turning of like, you don't know what you're asking me. Yes. So anyway, shout out Josh on taking all of your input and turning it into an output project that matches that.
He's been sweet. Yeah. Him and Paul Scott and Paul Kirkerberg renovating Hilldale right now and putting the sprinkler system in there. I'm like, hey, could we take this wall out? And they're like, oh man, she wants to take the wall out. No, and I'm like, the classroom would be bigger. But they really have been incredible. Classic. And so we found our home sweet home, and so we're making plans to be there. We're looking to close on the land in May, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
I just drove out there and I spent a lot of time out there just praying and just, visioning what is it going to look like. Yeah. And just now when I was there, I saw the posts for the sign, that we're going to put up here soon that says Future Home of Chapel. And I'm like, it's really happening. Yeah. That's crazy.
Well, I do have, so we were out there Good Friday because, the school had said, hey, you guys can go out there and pray with your family or whatever. And a neighbor from across the street came up to us. Yeah. His name was Mr. Darrell. He came up and introduced us. We're nobodies. But he just said, we're so excited about the school potentially coming here. He lives right across the street on the corner there. And he just said, if there's anything we can do. And so that leads me to my next question of Chapel Hill is not at its core, at its mission, a school just for the families whose children or grandchildren attend there. It really is meant to be a blessing to the community. So what would you say to someone who is maybe a longtime Clarksvillian that's been around a long time and has not seen a school like Chapel Hill started and growing and yet wants to be a part of the vision and hears something about founding families and knows how important those resources are to allowing this vision to come to fruition? What would you say to them about, being involved, or how would they do that? What does that look like?
Sure. So when I think about the future graduates of Chapel Hill, I think about here in our community, we have future doctors, future lawyers, future dentists. We have future business owners, farmers, electricians, moms, dads. And so I think about the future of our community. And we love to serve our community and get outside of the classroom and get out into Clarksville. But what I think is so special is what's growing inside of Chapel Hill and the way that it's seeping out into their families and their grandparents and their aunts and uncles. And so for me, when I think about what Chapel Hill's doing is not just for us, it's not just for the kids who are in this building, but I think about future generations, the seeds that we're sowing and the harvest that's coming for Clarksville. And so that's what's exciting to me, is to think not what God's doing right now, but like 100 years when I'm long gone, and what God's continuing to grow inside this campus, you know, that we're going to have. I pray that the children are outside of that campus all the time, you know, in our community and beyond. You know, my dream is let's go on mission trips and let's impact the world and show them what true servant leadership looks like. And so for me, I think if somebody wants to get involved, like, come and see it. Like, contact me. I want you to come and experience Chapel. And I want you to see their genuine love for the Lord and the relationships that are blooming there. And so that would be one of the first steps. I would say, like, you've got to come and experience it. And then just to visit our website, there's lots of information, videos, pictures. I love, like, highlighting them on our social media.
You're very good at that.
Well, I just enjoy it. It brings me such joy. But I think for somebody who wants to get involved, I think it's if they're looking at the impact on the community. How can we impact it now, but how can we impact it when it's beyond our time here on earth? I think that's what's most exciting.
And I think that there is you mentioned it before, these three churches who are long-term established churches in our community that people have connections to, and yet have shown a very welcoming spirit to the school that said, hey, there were people, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, who invested in acquiring the space, the real estate, the land, the lot, the buildings that eventually were housing this school. And I look beyond our current generation of students and think, what can we build where at the corner of Trough Springs and Sango, there is a place where many, many years to come, long before or long after you're the head of school anymore, long after my kids are no longer students there, but it is a staple in the community where not only are students impacted, but I've heard this story personally where parents are impacted and parents' lives are changed by the spiritual growth of their students. Grandparents' lives are changed by the spiritual growth of their grandchildren. And to me, as a lifelong Clarksvillian, went to school and came back, but lifelong Clarksvillian, it is something that I want to be a part of growing and establishing here. And I get to be a part of it as a parent right now. But I think that there is definitely room for someone who has been around here forever and is not connected to the school in any way, doesn't have any students there, not going to have any students there, but yet believes in there being a presence of a local school that is centered on, a biblical worldview, but yet highly academically gifted with great teachers, great supports, and is helping that come to fruition and be a part of our community for a really, really long time.
And that's just exactly what I pray for, is for God to surround us with people who believe in this and have a heart for you and want to make this happen. And there's just such a peace that I feel like in his timing, it's coming, and so I think that's just amazing. There's a verse that I just love talking to the kids about because it says, prepare yourself because the Lord will do wonders among you. And I'm like, he's doing it. And I love our children so much, and I'm excited to see what the future has for them.
And I'm sure you've got story after story after story of crazy, amazing, incredible things that have just happened that you didn't expect. And then, there's something you're worried about and prayed about, and then it's just solved before you really even had an idea to try to figure out what your own strategy was going to be. And then it was just fixed, right?
No, it's so neat to see how God works and the things that I'm praying for, but he's placing it on your heart or your heart. And they come to me and they're like, hey, like, I just feel like I'm called to help you with, such and such. And I'm like, that's amazing.
I was worried about that. That's awesome. Well, this is a very loaded question, and I don't know that there's one answer to this, but as head of school, the person who birthed this idea, you've brought all of your resources and talents into bringing this. What is your dream for the students of Chapel Hill? Because there's a lot of ways to lead a school, and I think you've very clearly articulated what the vision and mission of your school was. But at the same time, as you said, you know, these are precious gifts that families are bringing to you, and you are not expected to be their sole, you know, maturing influence, but you're a strong part of it, and you get to set the course of that. And so I'm curious if you had something in the back of your head that just maybe you revisit as the times of leading a school, leading a staff of 50 plus, dealing with parents with different expectations or grandparents with different expectations, or fire codes and geological testing and all the stuff that you do, you revisit and you say, this is kind of the core of what we're doing for the students that we're going to be able to influence.
Sure. So I think when people talk about a mission statement, sometimes it's like just on a t-shirt or a poster, and it's like,
check the box,
and a sign. But truly it's something that we talk about all the time at Chapel Hill. And one of the things that I love to do is, like, each professional development that we have, we always go back and we say, how is this connected back to our mission statement? You know, is it part of the spiritual development, the academic development, the service and mission? And so that's our hope. And like you said, we're just one part of growing these children. Like, we get to help plant some of the seeds, and we're going to water it. We may not see the fruit of it in our time, but I think that's the neat part about how God brings people and families and students to our school. And so when I think about our students, I think about, I would love to have a child leave Chapel Hill and grow up who's spiritually mature, one who's confident in their relationship with the Lord. Chapel Hill represents 48 different churches right now. So like our student body. So that to me is so beautiful to think of all the different type, you know, Church of Christ, Baptist, Catholic, Presbyterian, Methodist, that we all come together because we believe in the Word of God and under Scripture. And so when things get feel hard or crazy, God, bring me back to your word and your scripture, and what does it say? So I want children who are spiritually mature. One of the things, you know, I talked about Shay earlier, when you lose somebody, death becomes really real, really fast. And it makes you think, these children are going to stand before the Lord someday. And it's not with mom and dad's faith, it's with their own. And so, and I don't say that lightly, because for me, that's one of the most important things that I can give that child, is to stand before the Lord and feel confident and to say, I know you. You know, and so that for me is number one. Of course, I want to grow these babies academically, and they can go and do whatever God's got for their paths. But I think also I want the students to feel confident in who God created them to be. Like, one of the things we tell the students is, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, because I think that's missing from this generation, is that identity of who God created me to be and confidence in that. And so that for me is something else I want to instill in them as well. So.
That's powerful. Well, I'm glad my daughters get to be a part of it. I know you're glad too. Your kids get to be a part of it, right? And you get to lead the vision there. So that's very cool. Well, I do want to jump into the lightning rounds.
Okay.
So these are fun questions, and I have to tell you, the I guess theme of the lightning round is second grade silliness, because we notice, like, second grade seems to be like just the silliest age, right? It's like, you know, your kindergartners and first graders, they have their own level of silliness, but you just mean for them to be silly. And then second graders, you know, who knows? So I kind of, normally we ask random questions. These are would you rather questions, with the intention that if the second graders in, who is it, Miss Kettler and
Miss Bailey
and Miss Bailey, if they listen to the podcast, they'll be in tears laughing.
Okay, they're in. Right. I feel like they're on my side.
Okay, Miss Hendrix, head of school. Would you rather be forced to sing along in front of a crowd or dance in front of a crowd?
Y'all would rather me dance. I'm not a good singer.
All right, we'll take that. Okay, Miss Hendrix, would you rather eat a spoonful of Nutella or a spoonful of maple syrup?
Oh, Nutella. I eat it all the time.
Fair enough. All right. That wasn't even a hard one. All right, cool. Would you rather do a book report or a science report?
Science report.
Really?
Yeah.
That surprises me. I thought you would have been a book report person.
No, I would go science.
I
had a great science teacher in middle school, like totally created the love.
Yeah. What school?
At Richview. It was Miss Edmondson.
Nice. Yeah, nice. All right. Would you rather be stung by a bee or have 5 mosquito bites?
I'll take the bee real quick.
Yeah,
just
done.
It's over.
Yeah, 5 mosquito bites, depending on the location.
Yeah,
they can really. And there's probably nothing more annoying than a second grader having mosquito bites, because they won't let you forget it if you ever have one. All right. Would you rather? Last question: build a sand castle or build a snowman?
Sandcastle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer that. My hands get so cold. So I'll go to the beach. We'll do the sandcastle.
You say that, and then here your family is, your amazing husband, Chad, putting all the rest of the dads and husbands to shame every time the weather gets crazy. Because here's Sarah posting pictures of her husband, like saving the day, building a shed, like saving chickens, crawling under a crawl space. He's got all these skills, and we're all like, we don't have those skills. Like, hopefully Adanya doesn't look at that and look to me to fix anything, because I can't do it. But it's like, I remember when we had that really bad cold, I think y'all may have had some issues.
Burst.
Yes. And did Chad fix it?
He did.
Okay. Yeah. Embarrassing to every other dad and human out there, because here Chad Hendrix is like superhero of all dads and husbands.
He's like going in. Our house was built in the 1850s. And so it has like huge rocks still as the foundation. And so he's like crawling under, and I'm like, look how pretty the rocks are, you know?
Thanks, Sarah. It's freezing out here.
Yeah. And he's like trying to get the water fixed. And I'm taking pictures of the foundation. But it was a good time.
There's a whole marriage conference in that analogy right there.
Exactly.
The house built on foundation of the 1850s, and, you know, husband's distracted by this like physical grueling work. And here the wife is Instagramming the rocks.
Yeah. I'm like, they're so beautiful.
Classic.
I know it.
Well, shout out, Chad. You're amazing. We all think you're great. Well, I do want to say thank you so much for the blessing that you are to our community in lots of ways. You know, I remember my first memories of you were as CHS cheerleader. I was a student at Rossview. You know, we were in school around the same time, but I remember hearing nothing but, you know, she's just the nicest, most tenderhearted, sweet person. And, you know, of course, everyone kind of goes their separate ways in college. And then we've all kind of moved back home. And, you know, from If Table to Mayor Pitt's mayor campaign to now this, you have just been a blessing in our community. I remember sitting there with Miss Tucker and yourself at this first, you know, kind of question into our daughter entering kindergarten. And it was funny because I thought you approached it of like, what do you want to know as parents about Chapel Hill, or what questions can we answer you? And I was like, in my heart, I kind of laughed. I was like, you're Sara Hendrix. Like, this is going to be amazing. And we just want our kid to be a part of it because you're here.
So thank you so much.
But thank you for everything you do. I know that your vision is going to come to fruition. I know that God puts it into people who have the courage to see these things, and who have the wisdom to leverage the skills and the gifts and the resources and the experience of people just like you've done. So know that we're all on your side and that we're on your team, and we're happy to see where Chapel Hill goes in the future. But if you are listening and you have made it to the end of this episode, thank you so much. We are excited to bring you more content. Sara Hendrix is one of the powerhouses in our community, where when she has something in her head, she brings it to fruition. She makes it happen, and she brings us great things like Chapel Hill. Who knows what else is going to be in our future through people like her. But it's my job as host of this show to keep telling stories of people like Sara and all of our other guests up to this point who are just doing amazing things around our community. We really believe this is a great place to live. We believe in the positive message of people making dynamic change, taking risk, being people of faith, you know, stepping outside of fear and doing great things for the well-being of our community. And Sarah's one of those people. All of our guests are as well. So we encourage you, track back to episode 1 all the way through, catch out all those episodes, hit subscribe or like, whatever social media tells you to do. We'd love for you to be a part of our online community of people who are just excited and positive about the growth in the future of Clarksville. I'm Kevin Kennedy signing off. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks so much.